There are moments in life that don't need words. Moments so raw, so emotionally charged, that they silence entire rooms and set the internet ablaze within seconds. And on that fateful night, when Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo embraced under the glittering stage lights, time itself seemed to hold its breath. It wasn't just a hug. It was a story, a confession, and perhaps even a quiet reconciliation that fans had been praying to see for years. The two men, whose paths had crossed in ways both beautiful and painful, shared something beyond fame, beyond friendship, something deeper, almost spiritual. The air was electric that evening. The crowd, thousands strong, roared and waved banners that painted the arena in a sea of red and green, Xiao Zhan's and Wang Yibo's symbolic colors. No one expected what was about to happen. It was supposed to be just another awards night, a routine, well-rehearsed performance, a polite nod, maybe a handshake. But destiny had a different plan. As Xiao Zhan walked onto the stage, the cheers grew deafening. He looked stunning, dressed in an elegant black suit that shimmered subtly under the spotlight. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried something deeper, a flicker of nostalgia, maybe even hesitation. And then, from the other side of the stage, Wang Yibo appeared. The crowd gasped. He was effortlessly striking in a sleek white jacket, his confidence radiating with every step. The contrast between them, black and white, calm and fire, silence and thunder, was poetic. For years, fans had written stories about them, painted art, made music videos, even cried over the what ifs of their bond. But now, they stood just a few feet apart, real, breathing, vulnerable. The host tried to speak, but the energy between them was too intense to ignore. Xiao Zhan turned, his eyes meeting Yibo's across the stage. For a moment, it was as if no one else existed. Every camera flash, every scream, every heartbeat melted away, leaving only that silent, magnetic connection. Wang Yibo's lips curved into a faint smile, small, almost hesitant, but warm enough to melt a million frozen emotions. Xiao Zhan blinked once, twice, then exhaled softly, and in that moment, he stepped forward. The audience went silent. The world seemed to slow down as the two men closed the distance between them. Yibo raised a hand, perhaps uncertain whether to go for a handshake or a pat on the shoulder. But Xiao Zhan didn't let him decide. He pulled him into a hug. A real, genuine hug. It wasn't staged. It wasn't for the cameras. It was human. Yibo froze for a second, caught between shock and emotion. Then his arms came up, strong and sure, wrapping tightly around Xiao Zhan's frame. Their heads rested against each other's shoulders, and for a heartbeat, no, for an eternity, everything else disappeared. People cried. Cameras flashed. Even the host stood speechless. Two men who had weathered storms, public scrutiny, rumors, distance, now stood together, their hearts speaking louder than words ever could. The arena erupted with chants of their names, and the sound of sobbing fans filled the air. One fan wrote later, that hug wasn't just a hug. It was forgiveness, reunion, and love all wrapped into one. Even those who didn't believe in fate began to wonder that night, because that single embrace carried years of stories, of trust, of separation, of unspoken understanding. When they finally pulled apart, their eyes met again. Xiao Zhan's eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with a softness that words couldn't capture. Yibo, ever the composed one, let out a breathy laugh, his dimples showing for the first time that night. It was a kind of laughter that comes when relief meets joy, like a storm finally giving way to sunlight. Backstage footage later revealed more. Xiao Zhan had hesitated before going on stage. He'd looked at the monitor showing Yibo's live feed and whispered something to his manager. It's been a long time. And when he walked up, that thought never left him. For all the pain and distance, there was still a bond, fragile, but alive. After the hug, fans noticed something subtle. Wang Yibo's hand lingering for a fraction of a second longer on Xiao Zhan's back, almost as if to say, don't go too far again. That simple touch became the most replayed moment online. Within hours, hashtags like #Xiao Zhan Wang hug and #reunion of the century dominated every major platform. Clips of the hug gathered millions of views in less than 24 hours, and the video flooded with emotional comments. I didn't cry until I saw them smile at each other. This is what healing looks like. They didn't say a word, but we all understood. The magic of that night didn't end on stage. Later, during the after-party, insiders whispered about seeing them sitting together at a small corner table, laughing quietly, sharing stories as if the years apart had been mere days. A single photograph leaked online, blurry, slightly out of focus, showing Wang Yibo leaning forward, smiling, and Xiao Zhan listening intently, hand resting against his chin. That picture alone sent the internet into chaos. For fans who had followed their journey since the Untamed, that hug was more than nostalgia. It was hope. It reminded everyone that bonds built from authenticity can survive even the harshest storms. And maybe, in a world of carefully curated images and scripted interactions, that unscripted hug was exactly what people needed to believe in something real again. The media tried to twist it, of course. Headlines exploded. Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo reignite old sparks. Was it just fan service? But fans knew better. There was something sacred about that moment, something that couldn't be faked. Because when Xiao Zhan whispered something into Yibo's ear before stepping back, the cameras caught just enough of his lips to send lip readers into frenzy. The words seemed to be, "I missed this." And Yibo's smile, wide and unguarded, said everything that needed to be said. The internet would not sleep that night. Artists drew fan art of the hug within hours. Musicians wrote songs inspired by it. Fanfiction communities exploded with new stories, not fantasies, but celebrations of what had truly happened. That one embrace united millions across the world. Months later, during an interview, a journalist cautiously brought up the hug. Xiao Zhan smiled faintly and said, "Sometimes, a hug says more than 1,000 apologies." When asked if they were planning any collaborations again, he laughed, but didn't say no. Wang Yibo, in his characteristic quiet tone, said in another interview, "It felt natural. That's all." And that simplicity, that raw honesty, made fans love them even more. Their connection, forged through the fire of fame and tested by time, still pulsed beneath every smile and glance. That hug wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of another chapter. Maybe one written not in scripts or interviews, but in quiet moments. Shared laughter backstage, brief texts exchanged after midnight, or silent support that never makes the headlines. And somewhere, in that vast universe of fleeting fame and temporary alliances, two hearts still understood each other without needing to say a word. The hug was real. The emotion was real. And for everyone who watched that night, it was a reminder that even after the longest silences, even after the heaviest storms, love and connection always find a way back home. The world hasn't stopped talking about that hug. Days passed, but the memory of Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo standing under that sea of lights, holding each other like lost friends finally finding their way home, still burns in the hearts of millions. But what truly happened after that hug? What did that silent moment hide beneath the thunderous applause? This continuation reveals more than just a gesture. It unravels the emotion, the energy, and the invisible story behind that world-stopping embrace. The arena still pulsed with echoes of their names long after the lights dimmed. Xiao Zhan stood at the edge of the stage, still feeling the warmth of Wang Yibo's arms lingering on his shoulders. For a second, he closed his eyes, and the world seemed to melt away. The sound of fans crying, shouting, clapping, it all faded into a gentle hum, leaving only the steady rhythm of his heartbeat and the memory of that familiar scent. Wang Yibo's cologne, the same one he'd worn years ago. It was subtle, but Xiao Zhan recognized it instantly. It hit him like a wave of nostalgia, memories of filming under heavy rain, of laughter between takes, of quiet conversations late into the night when the cameras had gone silent. As the two men left the stage, the crew and performers around them clapped softly, not out of formality, but from pure awe. Everyone had felt it. The sincerity, the warmth, the years of distance melting in a single touch. Backstage, Xiao Zhan and Yibo walked in silence for a few steps before stopping. Neither of them spoke. Their eyes did all the talking. Yibo tilted his head slightly, that same teasing smirk flashing for a second before fading into something gentler, something vulnerable. "You really went for it," he murmured finally, his voice low, almost a whisper. Xiao Zhan chuckled, that deep, familiar sound that had once made Yibo smile without even realizing it. "I had to," he replied. "You wouldn't have." Yibo grinned, shaking his head. "You always did steal the spotlight." The playful tone couldn't hide the emotion underneath. For years, they had avoided moments like this. Too public, too loaded, too risky. But tonight, it didn't matter. The moment they hugged, every wall they had built around themselves began to crack. Then, someone from the crew called them for a quick interview. The cameras were back. The air changed again. Professional, sharp, a little tense. But when the reporter asked, that hug seemed very emotional. "What did it mean to both of you?" Wang Yibo glanced at Xiao Zhan. The pause that followed was electric. "It meant," Xiao Zhan started, then looked at Yibo and smiled softly. "It meant that time changes many things, but not everything." The crowd behind the cameras broke into quiet gasps. It was subtle, but everyone felt it, the weight behind those words. Later, as they were escorted to their dressing rooms, Xiao Zhan's assistant whispered, "You broke the internet." And indeed, he had. Social media was on fire. Clips of the hug had gone viral, hitting millions of views within hours. Fans around the world were editing slow-motion videos of their embrace, pairing it with emotional music. It wasn't just trending, it was history. But while the world analyzed every frame, the two men found themselves sitting across from each other again in a quiet backstage lounge. The noise of the crowd still faintly echoed from outside. But here, it was peaceful. For a moment, neither spoke. They didn't need to. Xiao Zhan poured himself a cup of tea, his fingers trembling slightly. Yibo noticed. Of course he did. He always noticed. Without saying a word, he reached forward and steadied the cup, their fingers brushing briefly. The silence between them was heavy but comforting, like two souls who had once known each other's rhythms and were rediscovering them again. "Did you plan that?" Yibo asked after a while, his tone light but his eyes searching. Xiao Zhan looked at him, a half-smile curving his lips. "Would it matter if I did?" Yibo shook his head. "No, it just felt right." And there it was, honesty. Pure, unfiltered, honest emotion. The kind that had always existed between them, even when words failed. Suddenly, there was laughter from the corridor. Staff members were joking about the hug of the century. Someone said they just rewrote fan fiction into real life, and they both burst out laughing. The tension eased, replaced by that familiar, easy warmth they'd once shared. But behind the laughter, there was a tenderness neither of them could deny. As the night went on, they found themselves talking, really talking, for the first time in what felt like forever. About work, about life, about the things fame had changed and the few things it hadn't. They talked about the Untamed, that project that had changed their lives, and maybe even defined them in ways they never expected. "You know," Yibo said softly, "that hug, it reminded me of the scene from episode 43. Xiao Zhan chuckled. "The one where Lan Wangji and Wei Wuxian reunite." "Yeah," Yibo nodded. Only this time, it wasn't acting. That statement hung in the air. Quiet, sincere, and true. Outside, fans were chanting their names again. Inside, the two men just smiled at each other, letting the sound fill the silence between them. That night, the hug didn't just shake the internet. It healed something broken. Not just in their friendship, but in the hearts of millions who had watched them grow apart and hoped for a moment like this. When Xiao Zhan finally stood to leave, Yibo followed him to the door. "You'll call?" Yibo asked, trying to sound casual, but there was a flicker of hesitation in his tone. "I will," Xiao Zhan promised. Then, before walking out, he turned back and added softly, "Don't change your cologne." Yibo blinked in surprise, then laughed, the kind of laugh that comes straight from the heart. Later that night, a single photo leaked online. Xiao Zhan leaving the venue, looking over his shoulder with a small, almost wistful smile, while Yibo stood in the doorway watching him go. The image went viral within minutes, fans calling it the goodbye that spoke 1,000 words. But maybe it wasn't goodbye at all. Maybe it was the beginning of something being rebuilt. One hug, one look, one unspoken promise at a time. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't the ones written in scripts or lyrics. They're the ones written in heartbeats. And that night, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo's heart spoke louder than any song ever could. Their hug was more than a gesture. It was a message. A message that said, we remember. We forgive. We're still here. And perhaps that's why millions still replay it. Because deep down, everyone hopes for a moment like that. Real, raw, and unforgettable. Sparkling heart, if you love this emotional continuation of Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo's unforgettable hug, don't forget to like this video, share it with other fans, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more breathtaking stories and updates. Glowing star, your support means everything, and it helps keep this channel growing so we can continue bringing you the stories that touch your heart.